mulling what could become the world's biggest free trade agreement. Looking for more economic power-ups, the sides are discussing the deal on the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership Treaty. As RT's Marina Portnaya reports, though, the document could lead to governments falling into corporate pockets.
Tonight I'm announcing that we will launch talks on a comprehensive transatlantic trade and investment partnership with the European Union, because trade that is fair and free across the Atlantic supports millions of good-paying American jobs.
Grand promises minus any explanation. It's been 1 year since the U.S. president announced the establishment of a transatlantic free trade agreement known as TAFTA.
They have been negotiated in total secrecy, away from the Congress and the people. There have been about 600 corporate executives, corporate lobbyists negotiating the deal with the United States trade representative with the other countries.
Sweeping U.S. surveillance has cast a cloud over negotiations as Germany threatened to pull out, outraged over Washington snooping on its European partners. But if the free trade treaty actually goes through, it promises both sides of the Atlantic massive gains of up to $159 billion, as more exports are expected to create more jobs. But the profits could come at a cost to citizens. Critics say the treaty would get rid of policies put in place to protect the people.
The danger here is that this will amount to deregulation, that basically there'll be a race to the bottom and health and safety standards will be diminished in an attempt to create some kind of huge market with the same standards.
For example, genetically modified foods are not labeled in the U.S., while in Europe it's mandatory. But in the name of free transatlantic trade,
any regulations against GMOs is an impediment to trade, and therefore simply no longer hold. They're simply removed by these trade agreements. So then Europe is automatically opened to GMO seeds and GMO foods, regardless of what the European people want.
Under the treaty, cars and pharmaceutical drugs could reportedly end up being tested only once by the exporting country instead of the current standard of dual testing.
Be it fracking, banking, or flying, TAFTA, critics argue, will leave governments with no choice but to change policies that better suit the business needs of private corporate power.
What their hope is to find the lowest common denominator between the U.S. and EU standards that then make it more easy for there to be quote-unquote trade. They call our regulations and our standards that protect health and safety trade irritants, they're called, as opposed to barriers. And we believe that many of those standards are there for very good reason.
Public support for safety standards and regulation may be the very reason American and European citizens have been kept in the dark about what may turn out to be the world's largest free trade agreement. Marina Portnaya, RT, New York.
Edwards, a writer on economics, politics, and social justice, says governments are already giving in to big business.
We can see in many countries at the moment that there's governments that are already serving corporate interests, and what little protection citizens have are in the place of their domestic governments. The ability to be able to protest, the ability to be able to place petitions, the free speech. Essentially what could happen is that corporate interests are going to be aligned so that the profits can be maximised. And of course, this will mean that essentially governments will be neutered. What protections that they're offering citizens at the moment, albeit these are being eroded slowly, this could essentially take away any protections that citizens have against corporations, and we'll have a David and Goliath situation where
A judge has died in the central